open the profile model of the top sidewalk element. To do this, we can click on the element, hover over it, and open the profile model. We can put this in any view, but I'm going to continue to work with my profiles in view number 2. So I'm just going to left click in view 2 and display my profile view for that horizontal geometry. We're going to create vertical geometry, but before we do, we want to see the intersection points for the lot and the pad. So I'm going to go to my vertical geometry tools and click on Profile Intersection Point. When I use this command, I'm going to left click on my path, followed by a left click on all the elements which intersect that path. So when it asks me to locate element to show intersection, I'm going to left click on my path first, and then it asks me to locate the element which intersect that. I'm going to left click on my lot. I'm going to left click on my pad. And I can see both points currently displayed in my profile. Then you can reset to complete. We're done with that tool. So we can switch over to vertical geometry, profile line between points. To create our sidewalk profile, we're going to draw a line between these 2 points. And I'll see if I can make this. And I want to draw a line between these points using profile line between points and giving this a name. I can always do it after I create it, but I'm going to go ahead and give it a name before I create it of just sidewalk profile. And for element template, I'm not going to worry about that. It should copy the feature definition for the horizontal geometry. There's no length or slope. All we want to do is just snap to the center of these 2 circles, or these 2 points, and the easiest way to do that is to go to my center snap. So you can double click on center snap, and then left click on the first point at 0 station, and then followed by a left click on the second point. So you snap to those using your AccuSnap, and I use center snap to make it a little bit easier to snap to those. Now that I've created this, you can go back to element selection, and we need to make sure that this is set active. So I can click on this vertical geometry and then hover over it and set it active. And then we're going to repeat this process for the lower sidewalk as well. So I'm going to, using my element selection, I'm going to go back over here to view number 1, left click on the lower sidewalk line, the lower sidewalk edge, open profile model, and left click in view number 2 over here. And you can see there I've got sidewalk 1, and it's highlighting a different path. We're going to do the same steps, so I go back here to profile intersection point, and I'm going to identify my path. So I left click on my sidewalk edge, and then locate the elements which intersect that. I'm going to left click on my lot, followed by a left click on my pad. And it should show, if I zoom out a little bit, it shows my points in here, and so I can right click when I'm done and switch back over to the vertical geometry profile line between points, and we can draw a profile between these 2 points. My center snap is still active, so I'm just going to left click on this point up here. You might have to left click to identify your view, and then left click again. There it goes. So now I know I'm creating geometry. I can see this line stretches around and follows me where I go. It'll create this vertical geometry or this profile line, and the next point is going to snap to this point. So I left click when I see my yellow X for AccuSnap to let me know that it's snapping to the point. And we need to set that active as well. Going to my element selection, left click on the profile, hover over it, and set as active profile. And it's generating in 3D my 3D elements. I can see those sidewalk lines now. And then we can close the view that contains our profile. And we're going to select the 2 sidewalk elements and create those as a terrain. So go to my terrain model tools and create from elements. We want to create using certain settings here. We're going to do design contours, but we're going to give it a name of Sidewalk. And these are going to be break lines. So we can change that feature type to break line. Edge method is none. Now we can locate our elements to add to the terrain. I'm going to left click on both sidewalk edges. So left click on that one, left click on that one. And when I'm done, I right click and then go through my settings here. Left click to accept the break line. Left click for my edge method as none. And it creates a terrain. I can see my design contours, but only barely. If you wanted to, you could edit that to showing it more frequently under your element information, calculated contours. I could set that to a different value. And it just gives me contours more frequently. And once we've created the sidewalk as terrain, we can apply linear templates. So in my 3D geometry, apply linear template. We're going to change the template this time around to use different side slopes. Leave your design stage as is. Final top mesh. And locate your element to apply your template to it. We're going to click on the one on the top. And we're going to make sure we apply it on the outside of the sidewalk. But we need to change this to cut and fill slope table 1. So if you hold down the Alt key and then hit the down arrow, you can go to end conditions combined. So if we minimize these, we're going to go to end conditions combined, cut and fill slope table 1. Select that and hit OK. And left click to accept. And we're going to start at 0. And we want to end it, lock it to the end as well. It'll still trim, even though it's end is way over here. It's going to trim it back on this side. And we want to put it on the outside. So you want to left click on the outside of your sidewalk. With a sweep angle of 5 degrees, just leave that as is. Left click, and it creates that linear template. You need to do the same for the other side. So left click on this other sidewalk edge, and it should still be set to cut and fill slope table 1. So I left click to accept the template, left click to accept it at lock to the start, lock to the end, and then we want to go on the outside of this sidewalk. So I'm going to left click for the position with an exterior sweep angle of 5, left click, and it creates my linear template on this side. Now we can go back to our element selection tool, and we're going to do some target aliasing on linear templates. And to identify your linear template, you're going to click on this tick mark here and highlight the linear template. Okay, now if you hover over it, it will give you your context sensitive menus. You can go over to the corridor tools where that hammer is and hit the drop down, and underneath that tool there's a define target aliasing tool. That's the tool that we want. So I'll click on that and bring up my target aliasing, and we want to add to the list the corridor linear template for the lot. Identify the corridor linear template that is your lot or your parking, and then we're going to identify the linear template which is your yard and add that to the list, then your building pad terrain, and then your existing terrain. So add those to the list and hit OK, and then it updates that linear template. Got to do the same for the other side. Click on the handle for your linear template, hover over it, hit the drop down on the corridor tools, and click on target aliasing, and add in your lot and then your yard linear template, and then your building pad terrain, and lastly the existing terrain. So hit OK, and it updates The sidewalk should grade properly now, and we can focus our attention on the driveway.